Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today I'm going to answer some viewers' questions because you guys keep writing to me and it is my pleasure to offer my simple support, advice, guidance and knowledge to help you on your journey to Chap Nirvana. Now the first question I'm going to address is from Philip Jeeves. And that viewer says, I am particularly fond of the white dinner jacket. I hope you don't mind my asking, what is your opinion on white dinner jackets? Well, first thing I'd say is I own one myself, so that gives you an indication of what my thoughts are on the matter. But they are, of course, iconic and they occupy a sort of vaulted position in our way of thinking about men's style. Let me throw your mind back to the images of Sean Connery in those early Bond films. You know, in his white tuxedo, I think he had a red carnation or something on the lapel, and with a Rolex Submariner as he was wearing at the time. It's burned into the memory. One of the first thoughts I have when I think of Bond is that image. Then you think of Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, the white tuxedo again. Absolutely burned into the mind of men's sartorial elegance. But there's a reason why they wore those garments in those particular situations and why the white tuxedo is not necessarily the ideal choice for most situations in life today. And that's because they tend to be ideal for tropical or exceptionally hot climates where perhaps the standard black dinner jacket or tuxedo is too hot because black of course attracts heat, and the white, and let's be honest, tuxedos, they're generally not white, they tend to be an off-white colour, an ivory or an ecru colour, but the white dinner jacket as we call them, they tend to be the perfect match for a tropical climate where there's lots of heat. If you're going to a black tie event in a temperate climate like the UK or most of North America, outside of the absolute height of the summertime, I would say the white tuxedo is not the choice to make for two reasons. One, you're going to stand up like a sore thumb because everybody else is going to wear black, which is the standard attire. And the second reason is that if you go to a big city like London, New York or wherever, the guy wearing the white tuxedo is normally the waiter or the bartender. And you do not want to look like the hired help if you're going to a specialist event, you know, a dinner party or, you know, a special function, because all of the other guests are going to tap you on the shoulder and say, another gin and tonic here please, and you can imagine how embarrassing and annoying that will be. So unless it's been specifically pre-arranged, I would suggest go with a black dinner jacket in almost all situations. Unless you're in a tropical environment, then go for it, go for that white tuxedo. The only other environment where I would say that the white tuxedo has made a resurgence is cruising, because most cruising tends to be, you know, in hot environments, and if they even wear tuxedos these days in the special evenings on board, the white dinner jacket I think could easily be worn on a cruise. But generally speaking, you know, you don't want to risk looking like a waiter. Now my next question comes from Mike Bodner, who says, do you have any thoughts or recommendations on various waterproofing products for shoes and other footwear? What is available? Typically, I've treated new shoes with a leather water resistant spray, but I've always wondered if the product should be reapplied. Well, I have to say, Mike, my own take on protecting my shoes from the water that we encounter in normal life, be it through rain or, you know, just water lying on the pavements as we walk along, has been to make sure that my leather regime is good enough to protect the shoes generally. So just the application of wax polish should be enough to protect the shoe from typical water that you'll encounter in rain and so on. Now I know there are products you can spray onto your shoe which will perhaps protect it, and they may have silicone or other barrier products within it, which obviously is an impermeable barrier which stops rain getting through to the leather. I really don't feel good about those things. I don't think they're natural. I want my shoe to be able to breathe, and obviously those barriers will break down, and whatever product they're made of is going to be on our shoe. I'm sure it's not conditioning or nourishing. So to my mind, I do not apply things like that. Even on things like suede. I know suede, there are many different waterproofing sprays for suede, which you can use. I'm quite happy just to let it take its natural course. And with my normal leather shoes, wax polish as my final layer when I look after them should be enough to keep the water at bay. That's all I do. Now, if you're talking about outdoor footwear, and when I mean specialist footwear like walking boots and things like that, yes, I do use the products which are recommended by the various brands that I've owned, because I know that's designed and specially for that footwear. But on day-to-day ordinary dress shoes, I'd steer clear of it. Just my take. Take your own view. Now the next question I have remains on shoes and footwear, and it comes from Galu, who says, "Dear Ash, my mirror shines always get banged up throughout the day. Do you usually strip it all down before beginning a new mirror shine, or do you put new wax onto the existing one? If you do the former, how do you strip off the old wax?" Well, I'll answer that first. That's easy. If you are going to break the shoe leather down right to its original factory finish, I use a stripping agent, and the one I personally use is Renomat, which is a product by the French shoe product company Saphir. It's just a stripping agent. It's very effective. You get a rag, you get that Renomat on there, and you just scour it off. And it takes the leather back to its original finish. It doesn't damage the finish of the leather itself, because the colour of the leather shoe is set using an alcohol-based dye. It's not going to come off using a stripping agent. However, I do not strip all of the polish off my shoes just because they get a little bit cracked and banged up. What I tend to do is just reapply more polish on top, because by applying something like Saphir polish, so their Pat Deluxe polish, it's got a certain amount of waxes and oils contained within that polish, solvents, all right? And when you apply it, it sort of remobilizes the polish which is on top of your shoe. So that mirror shine you've got, when you apply new polish to it, it gets that polish moving around. It makes it a little bit more viscous. As I say, it remobilizes it. So it brings it back to life. You don't have to strip it all off unless you've really cracked it and it's all flaking away. There's always a way that you can revitalize it. I did a video on this last year. I'll put a link in the show notes below, where my wife actually stepped back onto my footwear. I had a pair of mirror shine shoes on, and she was wearing high heels, and her high heel it looked like a gunshot onto my shoes. However, I was able to bring them back to life just by using this process which I've described, by using new polish on top of old to remobilize it. It's actually really quite effective. And another question on footwear, coming a bit of a shoe guru here today, and this is a question from Tom Hodge, who says, "I have a question. Is a mirror shine appropriate for a wedding, or would this be inappropriate as it may deter attention away from the groom, especially if they do not mirror shine their shoes?" Well, that's a good question. You know, you want to exhibit good wedding etiquette, and as they say, the bridesmaid should never outshine the bride. Same kind of goes for the groom. However, when it comes to footwear, I think the wedding is the perfect place for a mirror shine. Often in wedding outfits, men choose to wear patent leather, which is kind of a cheaty version of a mirror shine, really. But I would always suggest a mirror shine is the perfect addition to a wedding outfit. It's a sparkly, happy, cheerful day, and that's exactly how I would describe the effect that a mirror shine has upon my shoes. Now, I recently attended a wedding, and I was best man to my good friend Tim Crow from the Big Pretty Man YouTube channel. And actually, the night before the wedding, he brought his shoes round to my apartment in the States, and I mirror shined his shoes for him so that he looked absolutely tip-top on the day of his wedding. Of course, I mirror shine my own shoes at the time, so that's one way you can get around it. Offer as a gift to mirror shine the shoes of the groom so that you do not show them up. But actually, a wedding, perfect place for a mirror shine, and I would suggest, doesn't matter if the groom doesn't shine his shoes, it's the least you can do to look the very best version of yourself. But if you're a bit conscious of it, offer to put that shine on his shoes too. Okay, next question comes from Neil, who says, let's have a look, what does he say here? He wants to ask a quick question. I am moving to Singapore shortly, and I was wondering whether you had any suggestions for a men's fragrance that would do well in the humidity. I currently have a few staples in rotation, but I was wondering if you knew of any surefire winners. Well, sir, Neil, I have been to Singapore, and I spent a bit of time there, a few days there in fact, and I remember it being an incredibly hot, humid and dense atmosphere, as it is, that part of the world typically is. And I remember some incredible rainstorms there as well. But with that sort of very heavy atmosphere, you're going to need a fragrance which is light, zesty and a strong performer. You want something that's going to cut through that dense, heavy environment. So I would go for things which are very citrusy and have got a little bit of power, or maybe something which is a bit aquatic, which often has a bit of citrus in there as well. Now, some of the favorites which I have would be Floris Special number 127. That's a nice old-fashioned, very stoic performing fragrance, which at the same time is very classy. And for me, perfect for an environment like that. There are many others out there. So, the ones which spring to mind, which I typically wear, which I think would work well there, is Chanel Bleu, and in its many forms. Maybe Dior's Sauvage. It's certainly got the punch, and it can really perform in dense environments. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a peak summer fragrance, but it's got strength. And I remember Singapore as hyper hot and heavy, so that might be a route to take. The other thing I would suggest is there may be lots of local fragrances which I'm simply not available or aware of. Why not take yourself off when you first get there down to that, what's the name of the big retail area? Is it Orchard Street or something like that? Lots of department stores, and it's like a retail lover's sort of, paradise. Find out what sells popularly in that area itself. Go up to these department stores, ask the people on the stands what's popular here, what works well. Find out what is, really functioning well in that area. Use local intelligence to your advantage. Don't just stick to the old classics from the new world or the old world. See what works in the new world for you and have a great time. I remember Singapore being a wonderful place, lots of history and heritage, and I'd love to get back there one day. Okay, next question is on the cravat, something we don't see very often. And this is from Hunter Luxton, and he says, I have always wanted to wear a cravat but lack the confidence. As to me, it echoes a kind of snobbery and pretentiousness, but I love the informal, refined look that they give off. A kind of sophistication without trying too hard. What's your take on these class obstacles some of us may have around wearing one? Well, you're right, the cravat in many people's mind conjures up a certain type of person, the retired colonel or the major in the bar of the golf club who's somewhat outspoken with a big red nose and certainly is in a class which we don't see that often today. I would say though, class dressing as we used to know it is dead, because the way the world operates today, we're a global market, all right? In the old days, the reason there was a distinction between upper class and lower class in the way they dressed, it came down to money, because the upper classes, they could afford to buy the nicer things. They could afford the silk cravats. They could afford, the quality clothing, the shirts, the suits and so on. Now we live in a globalized world where I can go on AliExpress and buy a silk cravat for probably £5, and I can have access to all of these wonderful items which would have been denied people of my class a generation ago. So class distinction in the way we dress, I think, is to a degree over. And you can wear what you want as long as you can afford it. So if you like the cravat, and I agree with you, the relaxed, casual style that the cravat offers as a kind of middle ground between a necktie and an open collar is perfect for many social situations. I actually thought about putting one on today before I came up here, but I'm wearing a linen shirt and I wasn't sure about the different textures of my clothing. But certainly, think of it more as a sartorial item than a class item, and if you like it, wear it. Don't let your confidence hold you back. Those days of class distinction in clothing, it's gone. And it's just a follow-on question as my final question, and it's also from Hunter Luxton, who says, what's your view on not wearing a tie? Well, The tie-less look is definitely growing in popularity, and I think in recent years we've seen even the most dyed-in-the-wool professional businesses and companies, law firms, corporate businesses, now remove the necktie from their dress code for their professionals. That kind of has signed the death knell for the necktie in the wider world, and I can't avoid saying that's what's happened. However, those of us who enjoy a tie, we enjoy them because they do give you a smarter look. They add a piece of aesthetic to your clothing, which is removed when it's not there. You've got the opportunity to wear something with colour, with texture, with pattern. It fills that big gap in your, chest area, which doesn't look right to me when you're wearing a jacket and an open collared shirt. The tie just looks right for me, and it's an opportunity to put across a little bit of your charisma in the outfit that you're wearing. You imagine you're wearing a charcoal grey suit with a white shirt, open collared. It is absolutely bloody boring. But you can enliven it, enrich it by wearing a tie, and just like that, with the addition of one small item of clothing, you can bring that garment to life with a flourish. So that's my thoughts on wearing a tie. I get it, people don't wear them anymore, and I understand why. But I'm not giving up wearing them anytime soon, and I think the intentionally well-dressed men out there will also agree with me. So there we go, folks. Those were the questions today. I hope you enjoyed them and my responses to them. If you would like to ask me a question, you can send me an email. You can see the email address on the screen now, or just drop it into the comment section below. If you'd like to subscribe, click your red button. If you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee, or you could even become a patron, and I make additional video content for my patrons every week. And to find out how to get to that, show notes below, links are in there. So until the next time, take care, polish those shoes, wear those ties, look sharp. How are we doing there, big fella?